Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. And yes, it's Young Turks at it again.
The Education Department under Betsy DeVos has been attempting to redo some of the efforts that were accomplished under the Obama administration. I'm specifically talking about Title IX and how it impacts college campuses.
Okay, the issue with Title IX is very, very simple. It circumvents due process. So it takes the legal system out of the hands of the police and the courts, and instead we have university officials and university panels deciding who's guilty on the preponderance of evidence, which is basically one person's word over another. All you need is 51% of the evidence, and basically an accusation in most cases is enough. The accused no longer has the right to legal representation. They don't get to cross-examine their accuser. They don't get to see the evidence. In some cases, they haven't been able to present counter-evidence. The investigation is done by people who are untrained to do that, and it's not their job to do that. And guilt or innocence is decided by a panel as opposed to a court. Now, this is crazy. This is absolutely fucking crazy, especially if you consider rape to be a fucking serious crime. Imagine there was a murder on a university campus, and instead of calling the police and the police investigating and arresting a suspect and collecting evidence and taking that person to court, and that person having due process and all the legal rights which an accused person has, and having their day in court, and if found guilty, then being sent to jail. Imagine instead of that, the university investigated the murder case, and they created a panel of university staff members to act as judge and jury. And if they found a particular accused person guilty based on nothing more than hearsay, then they expelled that person. Do you think that would be justice? Do you think that would be a good justice system? Do you think that would be a good replacement for the justice system? Or do you think that would be fucking crazy? Because that's basically what's happening in rape cases. And anyone who cares about the legal system and due process should be very, very concerned about this. Now, the Young Turks claim to be about social justice, which is meant to be about human rights and defending people and giving people equality, right? We know, though, that social justice in practice isn't really about any of those things, and this is the perfect example. If they were actually interested in justice in our society, then supporting the foundation of our fucking legal system would be a priority for them. But instead, their feminism gets in the way, because they only see females as victims and males as perpetrators. So the accused becomes guilty and therefore undeserving of any sympathy or any human rights, really. And the accuser becomes the victim, which means that's where all our sympathy should go. And anything she says should be taken 100% seriously. Without any investigation or any evidence or anything else, her word should be good enough. That's it. Need I point out why this is fucking bullshit?
Now, under the Obama administration, there was a directive or guidance. This was a non-legal binding guidance that would essentially encourage administrators on college campuses to investigate accusations of sexual assault and rape,
as opposed to the police investigating accusations of sexual assault or rape. You know, like they're trained to do.
Well, once Donald Trump was in charge, and once he nominated and then later confirmed Betsy DeVos as the head of the Education Department, things changed. And one of the things that Betsy DeVos wanted to do was offer more protections for the accused rather than the accusers.
What Anna means by more protection is the right to due process. You know, that basic fundamental thing that every single citizen should be entitled to.
So right now, as far as we know, there is a draft that will be proposed by the Education Department. The New York Times reported on it, but it is a draft. As it stands right now, it is not the finalized version. But we can tell you what the Education Department is thinking of doing moving forward and how disastrous it could be if someone ends up being a victim of sexual assault or rape on or off college campuses.
Of course, Anna leaves out that it's already disastrous for a lot of young men who have been falsely accused. That's why there's so many of them suing universities at the moment. But apparently they don't count, do they, Anna?
So I'll give you the details. If a party is on campus and a sexual assault or rape occurs.
Allegedly occurs, Anna. You forgot the word allegedly.
The university is required to investigate the allegation, provided that the alleged victim reports to the correct administrative official. So previously, under the Obama directive, let's say a rape or a sexual assault occurred on off-campus housing. Mm-hmm. That was still something that would be required for administrators to investigate. And now, under the Trump administration, things will change. If it did not occur on the actual campus, well, then no one is required to actually investigate it.
Apart from the police, of course. That is, if someone actually reports it to the police. I think you'll find, Anna, that they're required to investigate such a crime. I'm surprised you're unaware of that.
Also, the accuser, whether it's a male or female, would have to go to a specific person or the right people in order to get that accusation investigated. Previously, under the Obama administration, it was different. If someone, any type of employee on the college campus was alerted to sexual assault or rape, it was their duty under this guidance to do something about it.
Even if they have no training, or even if they have a massive bias. I mean, imagine someone like this investigating a rape case.
The men's rights movement points to a number of very real issues in our society, that there are very few resources available to men who experience domestic or gender or sexual violence, to the fact that suicide rates are very high for men, incarceration culture, high dropout rates, lowering participation in post-secondary education. These are all very real and pressing and urgent issues. But they go from there immediately to it's women's fault, because they are denying men their natural rights as men. Meaning, if only we could just have sex with whoever and whatever we want, whenever we want, then maybe we wouldn't have to rape you.
Now, I'm not sure whether she would actually investigate a rape case, but I guarantee you there are many, many people on university campuses with very similar bigoted, biased opinions. Would you really want someone like that investigating a rape case? As opposed to, the police.
Betsy DeVos essentially wants to say, no, this person, the accuser, needs to go to specific people.
And that these are huge changes, because it used to be that two students involved in something, regardless of where it happened, they can go to university and university investigates it. Oftentimes, the RA, the residential advisor, will be the one that gets the complaint, and then it becomes an official complaint that becomes investigated by the institution. But in the case of these new rules, if they go into effect, you have to be very specific about who you complain to, and you may not be. Or who you file a complaint with. You may not be comfortable, if you're a student, filing a complaint with this person. That can oftentimes have a chilling effect on these sorts of complaints. But the one big thing here is that Betsy DeVos is an institutionalist. And by that I mean she is working to see that these big institutions can protect themselves. And that's what they do naturally in these cases of sexual assault. Yet the Catholic Church does it. They care about protecting the church. They don't care about weeding out the infractors, if that's not a word, the perpetrators is the word.
But Hat Guy here doesn't know it, but he's just made an argument against Title IX. And apparently he's too stupid to realise that. Yes, institutions like universities are biased because of self-interest, and they care about their public image, right? That's a priority to them. I am not denying that at all. In fact, that's the very fucking reason why they should not be put in charge of legal matters like this. Because they have bias. If there are thousands of feminists screaming that rape on college campuses is epidemic and women are being constantly raped and we need to do something about it, then to save their public image, they're more likely to find someone guilty of rape and expel them, even if there's no fucking evidence. Now, Hat Guy here is arguing from the other point of view that they're more likely to sweep the rape under the carpet and pretend it didn't happen. And I agree, that happens sometimes too, which is why universities shouldn't be involved in this. It should be the fucking legal system. Either way, it's a bad idea for universities to be put in charge of this.
Those who've committed the infractions. And so you see it here. You saw it at Michigan with Nasser, that guy who was...
Michigan. Betsy DeVos from Michigan.
And they closed ranks, the school did, to protect, as you saw it at Penn State with Joe Paterno, and Sandusky was raping boys in the shower at Penn State. And the Penn State officials knew about it. They closed ranks to protect the institution.
Yes, I agree. Universities have self-interest and their public image as their main priority, which is, once again, the reason why they should not be involved in this. That's why we have police and a legal system, for fuck's sake.
DeVos is helping them do that. DeVos wants to see these big institutions protected, and that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know if that's her motivation. I would find it strange if that's her motivation, because it seems it's going to have the opposite effect on these institutions. But you know what? I don't fucking care, as long as accused men on campuses get due process rights. That's my main concern. And if Betty DeVos delivers that, fucking fantastic. And if her motivation is protecting universities, I don't really care, as long as those basic civil rights are delivered and guaranteed to men who have been accused of a crime.
Let me also just emphasize that a little more, because it is important. So in the Larry Nassar case, there were a number of female athletes who had gone to their coaches to complain about what was going on, to report what was going on. And those coaches, in a lot of cases, didn't do enough or tried to do something and it went nowhere. The point is, under this directive, should this pass, going to a coach wouldn't be enough. Like, they would have to go to specific designated individuals.
You mean like the police, Anna? That's crazy. I mean, why would a rape victim go to the police? Hey, look, we really need to protect rape victims, so maybe we should make it that rape victims can just report a rape to anyone. Their local baker, maybe a bus driver, maybe that homeless guy down the street, and those people should be required to investigate and do something about the rape as opposed to the police, right? Because, that would make sense. Right?
And that makes the assumption that the accusers have perfect information and that they're comfortable opening up to anyone that's been designated for that position.
I mean, the way these reforms supposedly came about are very interesting. The Obama administration, obviously, under Title IX, which I have questions about whether or not campus rape and the processes for proceeding with, all the actions that are necessary, whether that should have been housed under Title IX in the first place, but it was basically responding to a problem. Campus rape, okay.
Okay, the way you respond to a problem isn't by taking away legal rights from another group of people and automatically assuming that anyone who is accused is automatically guilty. That isn't going to stop campus rape. What it's going to do instead is just create another group of victims. You don't solve a problem by making it worse.
And we know that as it stands, people who are victims of sexual violence are, the stats are there to show that they are very unlikely to come forward and speak about what happened to them, to openly accuse the person who violated them, and that already there's so much stacked against those victims, and that school institutions not taking them seriously, to having to prove beyond a reasonable doubt all the different things, to having to be re-traumatized.
Well, there you have it, folks. She just said having to prove beyond a reasonable doubt is a bad thing. I guess goodbye to innocent until proven guilty, right?
These are all reasons why, right? Obama administration has new regulations and rules. Great. So it seems like actually the real reforms need to be in helping those schools and aiding those schools into better implementing the regulations and the new rules that the Obama administration set forward, not to scale them back. Betsy DeVos met with family members of supposedly wrongly accused victims.
Supposedly wrongly accused victims. Now, it's amazing how the Young Turks talk about the accusers and the accused throughout this video. Whenever it's an accuser, well, she's a victim, right? Without a doubt, not the alleged victim, but she's a victim, and we have to give sympathy to her because, she's a rape victim, without a doubt, even though this hasn't been proven in a court of law. But it's a completely different story when we're talking about someone who's been falsely accused. Then it's supposedly falsely accused, right? And you see, this is the problem. They're starting with the conclusion. The legal system shouldn't do that. It shouldn't start with the conclusion of guilt and innocence. The very idea of the trial is to determine who is telling the truth.
Mm-hmm. So like 3 or 4 moms who are very active in their little boys' lives still, from probably elite universities.
From probably elite universities. So she doesn't know whether they're from elite universities or not, but she's just making that conclusion based on her own ideology. She's making the assumption that Betty DeVos is only looking out for the rich, right? Because after all, Trump did appoint her, so therefore anything that she does must only be for the rich. And of course we all know that false allegations never ever happen. It's just a couple of rich white straight dudes who are trying to get away with rape with expensive lawyers, right? That's obviously what's happening here. And the evil Trump administration is helping them. It's obviously got nothing to do with due process.
Met with these poor, embattled, accused people accused of rape and said, oh no, the real problem is false accusation. The real problem isn't rape. See, I know it seems like that, but the real problem is the 1 in like 100 or 300 or 1,000 people in cases of false accusation.
Okay, 2 points here. The first one is it doesn't have to be the real problem is false allegations or the real problem is rape. They're both problems. And you don't have to be in favour of one and against the other. You can actually say that both are wrong. And in fact, false allegations hurt the credibility of actual rape victims. So feminists should be as against false allegations as we are. That is, if they actually cared about actual victims. But the other thing I found interesting is the fact that she said false allegations are, 1 in 100 or 1 in 300 or 1 in 1,000. Now I find this interesting because usually feminists quote the 2 to 8% figure.
In a previous video, I talked about false rape allegations. And in that video, I specifically mentioned the fact that the vast minority of rape allegations, at most 8%, but as little as 2%, probably closer to 2%, of those allegations turn out to be false.
Now, I've made numerous videos in the past pointing out why the 2 to 8% figure is not all that reliable, let's say. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to assume that it's 100% factual. I'm going to assume that the 2 to 8% figure is 100% correct. I want to use the very, very commonly used feminist argument against them in this particular case. That would mean that false allegations are somewhere between 1 in 50 and roughly 1 in 12. Now, 1 in 50 is a long way away from 1 in 100, 1 in 300, or 1 in 1,000. So I'm guessing Francesca isn't very good at math, or statistics, or reality. You just go with feminist assumptions, and, it's close enough. 1 in 12 is close enough to 1 in 1,000, I guess, right? Same thing when you're dealing with feminism. Now, there might be a counter-argument to the point I've just made. Maybe someone will point out, but Bain, the 2 to 8% figure is dealing with cases that go through the legal system. You have no way of knowing how many false allegations are actually happening on college campuses. You can't assume it's going to be at the same rate as in the courts. And you know what? That's a fair point. I don't have any statistics to show whether the rate at universities is higher or lower. Neither does Francesca. She's just pulling these figures out of her ass. But I can't see why they would be lower. In fact, I think they would be much, much higher, because there's no legal ramifications for someone lying, and there's no requirement to provide any evidence. Just your word, that's it. All you have to do is make the allegation. You don't even have to be cross-examined by the accused. They don't even get to ask you questions or have legal representation ask you questions. I mean, it would be a great way to get revenge on someone who's dumped you or cheated on you or doesn't want to go out with you in the first place, right?
A promising college football player's life dreams shattered as he was falsely accused of rape. His accuser, 19-year-old Nikki Iovino, told police that she went to a party where 2 football players forced her to have sex in a bathroom. She later admitted that she had sex willingly and was afraid that if she admitted that, another student wouldn't want to date her.
Now, I'm not suggesting every rape allegation on college campuses is like that, but you're fucking delusional if you don't accept that there would be some. And if we accept that it's at least 2 to 8% in the legal system, then I think it's fair to speculate that it would be much higher in the university system as it is. So no, absolutely not anywhere near 1 in 1,000.
Did she sit down and meet with campus rape groups or anti-campus rape groups? Did she sit down and meet with people who designed this? No.
No? She didn't meet with campus rape groups? Are you sure about that, Francesca?
Betsy DeVos has a brilliant new idea. She's reconsidering some of the policies in the education department, and Title IX guidance on campus rape and sexual assault is among those. And so she's going to meet with some leaders who care about that issue, and she's decided to meet with leaders who also don't care about that issue, or care about it in a different way where they think it should be de-emphasized. Curious. So let's give you details on those meetings. Think Progress reports after months of receiving requests for meetings from advocates for sexual assault survivors, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos has finally decided to sit down with them. Good news. But she's also meeting with groups that are critical of Title IX guidance on campus rape, some of which have histories of intimidating rape survivors and dismissing domestic abuse against women.
Well, that's embarrassing for Francesca. It seems that not only did Betty DeVos meet with college anti-rape groups, but the Young Turks have also covered it before. So at this point, I don't think Francesca's got one actual thing right. Speaking of which, if you haven't seen my video replying to the video that clip with Cenk is from, I'll leave a link below. It's basically more bullshit by the Young Turks on this same topic. And Cenk just read through a Think Progress article, which is nothing more than a hit piece, without doing any research or critical thinking. At one point, he even attributes a quote from a feminist to the men's rights movement, and uses that to condemn MRAs. Well done, Cenk. Well done. The Young Turks are clearly a shining example of what journalism should be, right? Speaking of which,
we only sat down with, I would assume, very privileged families defending their sons who were supposedly falsely accused. So
very, very interesting wording there, Francesca. I would assume very privileged families. The key part being I would assume. So she doesn't know, but she's just making assumptions based on her ideology, right? Clearly, Betty DeVos is a bad person and is only interested in helping white rich people.
Again, just a little bit of history of how we've gotten to this point of once again defending the powerful.
Once again defending the powerful. Well, that's interesting because when you take away due process from people, they're not powerful at all. They're at the mercy of the system. But clearly what she means by the powerful is rich people. She makes this point numerous times, and I think she mainly means rich white people. Of course, this is all based on assumptions that that's the only people that Betty DeVos is interested in defending, which is nonsense because the changes she puts in place will affect everyone. And not only rich white males are being accused. Now, I assume there are some who are rich and white and male, but as we will see in a little bit, there are numerous African Americans who have been accused as well, many of which are on scholarship and come from very poor backgrounds. Now, at the start of this video, I put up about 40 different stories from the last couple of months, which are basically updates of court cases which are going on at the moment. And trust me, this is just a drop in the ocean of what's actually happening. If you haven't paused the video and read some of those stories, I highly recommend that you go back and have a look. I didn't go through every story because if I did, this video would be about 20 hours long. And like I said, these are just ones from the last couple of months. But I do want to point out this particular story. It's about a first-generation immigrant male. His parents barely speak English and come from a very working class background, hardly what Francesca would consider to be powerful, and he was expelled just before graduation based on an accusation alone. And trust me, there are many, many cases just like this one. It's most definitely not all rich white men. For example,
I think that young men in these situations on college campuses get a fair hearing? Do people listen to their side of the story?
I mean, I think that was one of the issues, was the fact that when this happened, we didn't even give a statement. We had no opportunity to even give a statement when it happened. So we were suspended.
The school kicked you out without asking you to come explain what happened?
Was not asked a question about what happened before being suspended from school. So that was, yes, extremely unbelievable.
I think one of the issues, too, is the Title IX process in general.
Yeah.
You had a guest on your show on Wednesday that spoke of this very issue. These Obama-era policies created a very low standard of proof. I'll call it no standard of proof. And I know Betsy DeVos is working on a new set of proposals that will add due process, add the ability to raise a standard of proof and raise the ability to cross-examine and present evidence, review evidence. That does not exist in the Title IX concept right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable that no one asked you or the others your side of the story. You were told to pack up your stuff and leave?
Yes, immediately. Pretty much packed up my stuff. That upcoming week, because it was on a weekend, that upcoming week packed up my stuff and had to figure out what to do from there.
What's your...
Now, to be perfectly honest with you, I have no idea which race gets accused or falsely accused more than other races. I don't know if more black men are accused or more white men or more Asian men or whatever. And as far as I know, there's no study to pinpoint which race is accused more. And having looked at dozens and dozens of cases while putting together this video, I can say that a lot of those law cases where a student or former student is suing his former university, it's often referred to as John Doe versus Jane Doe, and the race of the male isn't given. So it is hard to pinpoint which race is affected more. However, having said that, I did notice that there were many cases involving black males, and often the accuser is a white female. And I did also notice another trend which I found interesting, so let's see if you can pick that particular trend as I go through 10 different cases. So let's start with the one we just saw a video clip for, which was Sacred Heart University, where a white female and 2 black males had consenting sex, and later on she cried rape. And then there was Colorado State University, where a white female had sex with a black male and then later on cried rape. The black male was expelled. And then there's the University of Findlay. Now, I put up a screenshot of an article on this at the start of this video. A white female had consenting sex with 2 black males and then later on cried rape. The 2 black males were expelled within 24 hours, and the university didn't interview many of the witnesses. There were other people in the house where the consenting sex took place, and the university didn't interview the black males in the house because they thought they would stick up for the accused. They did, however, interview the females in the house who contradicted the claims of the accuser. In fact, the accuser bragged about it afterwards, it seems. Then there was the University of Penn, where a white female and a black male once again had consenting sex, and the black male was expelled. And then there was Texas Tech University. Once again, a white female and a black male had sex, and the male was suspended. And then there was the University of Minnesota, where a female had sex with 10 black football players, and all 10 black males were suspended. The University of Oregon, where a female had sex with 3 black males, and once again the 3 black males were expelled. And the case from Boise State University, where a female had sex with 3 black males, and once again the 3 black males were expelled. And the University of New Mexico, where a female had sex with 3 black males, and once again, the 3 black males were expelled. And finally, Florida State University, where a female had sex with a black male, resulting in him being suspended. So did you pick a particular trend with a lot of those stories? Not all of them, but a large number. There seems to be a lot of group sex going on. It seems to be a lot of females sleeping with 2 or 3 or even 10 black males, and then afterwards crying rape. Now, I'm not a prude when it comes to sex, and I don't really care what other people do in the privacy of their own bedrooms, obviously as long as it's with consenting adults. So I don't really care if there are a lot of white females having gangbangs with black athletes at universities. But it does seem to be an interesting trend that a lot of them cry rape afterwards. Now, once again, this isn't an extensive study into false allegations. It's just a trend I noticed looking at a lot of cases. And I'm not exactly sure how relevant it is. It's just something that stood out to me. But the point is, obviously, these black males are hardly rich white men. I hate to tell you, Francesca, but it seems you've got another fact wrong.
I also want to quickly clarify something just in case people, because it's confusing, right? We're not talking about criminal proceedings in a court of law. We're talking...
Yes, and that would be the exact point, wouldn't it, Anna? We're not talking about a court of law. What we're talking about is kangaroo courts in universities, run by university officials who are not trained as judges or juries. Not to mention that they may have a bias due to their ideology or because they want to protect the reputation of the university. That is why this should be handled by the legal system, not kangaroo courts.
Talking about college or university administrators trying to decide what they're going to do with a very difficult situation. This is a complex issue. I don't want anyone to think it's black or white or that it lacks any nuance. It's very difficult to, decipher the right course of action moving forward. But what
maybe call the police, Anna. Maybe that would be the right course of action, right? As opposed to, a gender studies professor deciding who's guilty in a rape case.
I will say is that we're not having a discussion about due process in a court of law. We're having a discussion about whether or not it makes sense to punish an individual who has been accused of rape or sexual assault on campus.
Yes, without actually being found guilty in a court of law and without having due process rights. That's the point, Anna.
Or off campus at a school event or off campus dorms. You get what I'm saying. And the way that Betsy DeVos is handling it, she tries to make it seem as though she's trying to be fair and equal to both sides. But the way that she's handling it shows that there seems to be a preference toward protecting the accused as opposed to the accusers.
Yeah, that's because the accused don't have any legal protections, Anna. That's because all the legal protections are in favour of the accuser. Now, I don't know how anyone in their right mind can think that that is fair, unless, of course, you come to the conclusion that anyone who makes an accusation is telling the truth 100% of the time without fault, and that people never lie or never make things up, and that the accused is always fucking guilty, no matter what. Now, I don't know about how you see the world, but from my point of view, that's just not fucking reality. So yeah, the one group that has no legal protections needs to regain those legal protections for it to be equal, Anna. I shouldn't have to explain this to you. You are not an idiot. You're an ideologue, that's true, but you're not a complete idiot. No doubt a lot of people will disagree with that comment in the comment section. But anyway, let's continue.
And one of the reasons why the Obama administration even got involved in this was because there were multiple cases of individuals dealing with sexual assault and rape, and their accuser was still on campus, still taking the same classes as them, and they had to deal with it with the university brushing it under the rug.
Yeah, and I imagine that would be pretty tough if you're a legitimate rape victim and the person who raped you is still going to the same university and is taking similar classes to you or the same classes. I imagine that would be pretty rough. I imagine it would be also pretty rough if you break up with someone or don't go out with them and they make an accusation towards you, a false accusation, and you're then kicked out of university within 24 hours without ever being able to present your side of the story, or your side of the story ever being taken seriously, or witnesses which would be able to prove your accuser wrong not being interviewed, or not having due process, or numerous other things which are going on at the moment. Two wrongs don't make a right, Anna.
Because every university wants to make it in the top ranks.
Yes.
And you're not going to make it in the top ranks, and you're not going to enroll as many students as you want to enroll and make the money you want to make if you are known as being a school that has rapists and has been protecting rapists.
Yeah, so why not just expel anyone accused of rape without due process, or without a fair hearing, or without even looking at the evidence, just to protect the name of the university, right, Anna? I mean, that wouldn't be creating a whole new group of victims, would it? Right?
Right. So they've been brushing these cases under the rug for a long time, which is why the Obama administration got involved in the first place.
Right. That's the role of government. Like when I don't want the government involved in everything I do. I don't want it involved in most things I do. But I want it to step in when the incentives are clearly reinforcing bad behavior. It totally incentivizes you in every possible way to sweep it under the rug. Just ask Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan, who was, complicit in, sweeping under the rug stuff at the Ohio State University, when he ran when he was part of the wrestling department, and this stuff was going on.
Well, look at Ken
Another
Starr
Big
at
Ten
Baylor.
School.
Ken Starr at Baylor completely covering up sexual assaults. This is what they do, and as Anna says, the statistics are overwhelming. I mean, campus rape is a real problem. It's virtually an epidemic. And
since the 1970s, many academic feminists have claimed that American women live in a state of siege, constantly harassed, humiliated, and battered by men. Rape, they claim, is not only pervasive, but it is supported and sustained by cultural norms. Thus the term rape culture. Well, this grim worldview has little currency outside esoteric feminist circles until recently. Public perception began to change around 2010, and the term rape culture began to find its way into the mainstream.
I'm really, really, really furious at the culture of rape.
And everywhere, we heard that 1/5 of college women will be sexually assaulted.
It is estimated that 1 in 5 women on college campuses has been sexually assaulted during their time there. 1 in 5.
Well, the college rape epidemic meme went viral at the same time that rates of violent crime, including rape, were falling dramatically. And new data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics shows that the rate of rape or sexual assault for college women, these rates are low and have been dramatically decreasing.
Anna says the statistics are overwhelming. I mean, campus rape is a real problem. It's virtually an epidemic. And an epidemic. And so that's why the Obama administration felt the need to spring into some kind of action. And now to see this rolled back this way, and it is done really just to save face for the institution in whatever way, to keep them at the top of the rankings, or to just...
And to undo...
Due fucking process, you fucking morons.
Anything that Obama has ever done.
That
has been.
I also want to say that I've heard her speak on this. If you guys have listened, I feel like 6 months ago or so, DeVos basically said, listen, there's nothing we can do when tragic events happen. The education secretary said, essentially, we can't stop campus rape. Educate people not to rape. That's how you stop campus rape.
Okay, you can never stop campus rape or murder or any of these things. You can minimize them, but you will never be able to completely stop them because there will always be bad people doing bad things. Now, obviously, we should try to minimize them, but I have to say, teaching rapists not to rape is a ludicrous idea. If someone is so fucked up that they're a rapist, putting them in a class and telling them that it's not a good thing isn't going to stop them, alright? I'm pretty sure they already know that it's a bad thing. But you know what, since the Young Turks are suggesting that we should just have anti-rape classes to stop all rape or something like that, here's a couple of other ideas I think would be interesting to implement across universities and across society in general. Why don't we have classes to stop African Americans from being criminals? Oh, what? Sorry, you find that offensive because not all African Americans are criminals. In fact, most aren't. And stereotyping a group of people based on a minority within that group would be wrong. You know, kind of like what's happening to men constantly. Oh, here's another idea. Why don't we teach Muslims not to be terrorists? Whenever someone is a Muslim and they enter America, we should make them have mandatory anti-terrorist classes to teach them not to blow people up. Because, you know, that wouldn't be racist or bigoted or anything like that, would it? And yes, I know Islam isn't a race. Stop typing in the comment section. I know you're doing it right now. Stop it. But you get my point. It would be, the Young Turks would be saying that it's racist, and they'd be saying that it's Islamophobia and it's wrong, and they'd also be pointing out that it just wouldn't work. And they'd be right. If someone is so extreme that they're going to strap a bomb to themselves and blow themselves and other people up because of their fucked up worldview, then putting them in a class, a mandatory class, and telling them that it's wrong isn't going to stop them from doing that. It's not going to change their mind. In fact, it may reinforce that ideology.
You're the education secretary, dude. Like,
and show that the federal government takes cases of rape on college campuses or off college campuses, but involving 2 college students seriously.
She basically just said boys will be boys. She said boys will be boys in...
I think we just had an interesting insight into how Francesca's mind works. She started by saying she basically said boys will be boys, and then immediately changed it to she said boys will be boys. So she starts with her bias interpretation, which is run through the feminist filter, and then her interpretation becomes an actual quote said by Betty DeVos. Very, very interesting. I think we can understand now how Francesca just makes up facts.
Like a press conference.
Exactly.
And this is the law and order party. And I know that this still allows for the legal procedures to go down the line, but don't you, I mean, everywhere else you're encouraging people, go to vigilante, go find these people, report these people who you think are not citizens, go do that. But when it comes to a system of higher education, it's like got implicit racism because these are college kids. And if you look at the numbers, college kids are like more proportionally white people who are well off. And that's exactly what it is. And
well, that's an interesting statement right there at the end. So it's racism because college kids are mainly white and well off, right? That's an interesting statement. First of all, let's deal with the well off part. Now, look, I will admit it is much easier to get an education in America if you are well off or wealthy. But that doesn't mean that everyone, or even the majority of people going to university in America, could be considered well off. There are lots of parents who have scrimped and saved for decades to send their kids to university. There are other people who can only go to university because of scholarships. There are others who both work and study because that's the only way they can pay to get through the system. And then there's people who take out student loans and have to pay them back for decades afterwards. I wouldn't consider any of these people well off or, as is being implied by the Young Turks, rich. Because let's face it, that's the theme of this whole episode of the Young Turks, right? Betty DeVos is looking after rich white men. But let's use the Young Turks logic here for a second. If Betty DeVos is focused on rich white people because she's focused on universities, then isn't Title IX just for rich white people as well? Because, you know, most university students are white and well off, right? So does that mean Title IX is racist because it's only for the rich and the wealthy? Of course not. That would be an idiotic argument. And of course, Betty DeVos is focused on education. That's her fucking job. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know if Betty DeVos's recommendations will be an improvement. And if they are an improvement, I don't know how much of an improvement. But something needs to be done. And just talking about due process rights in universities, that's a fucking start. Oh, there is one other thing. Just a word of advice to any young people out there going to universities in America. It might be safer to keep your dick in your pants. Now, I'm not suggesting all women are going to make false allegations, but if you're unlucky enough to come across one who does, you're pretty much fucked.
What happens when we turn women's pain into the punchline? They're not taken seriously, nor are their rights. And now that Trump is president and the country has turned into one giant access Hollywood bus, the next punchline is undermining women's rights by rolling back access to birth control, safe abortions, and eliminating Title IX protections for victims of sexual assault on college campuses under the most bullshit pretenses.
There is no way to avoid the devastating reality of campus sexual misconduct. Lives have been lost. Lives of victims and lives of the accused.
That's right. We are all lives mattering rape now.
Also, there's no way to avoid the reality of campus sexual misconduct. You're the education secretary. Teach people not to rape. Teach people not to rape.
Teach people not to rape.